everybody, it's Joel from the Board Game Mechanics. Today I'm taking a look at The River from Days of Wonder. Oh, Days of Wonder, you have made some really wonderful games for us over the years that are excellent production value, nice set of rules, easy to teach, easy to play, nice medium weight, medium light games that we introduce our families to, and we enjoy making gamers out of these people with these Days of Wonder games. I'm thinking of Ticket to Ride. I'm thinking of Five Tribes in Yamatai even. There's just some really great games over the years that Days of Wonder that you've put out. We love them. Mystery of the Abbey. I mean, just so many good games you put out. But there are a couple ones that we've panned over the years. I'm thinking of maybe Relic Runners. I like that game. A lot of people don't. Cargo Noir. Again, another one that's popular with the Board Game Mechanics, but has been panned. Where does The River land in that whole spectrum of games? Well, let's go to the table, take a quick look at this game, how it plays. Then we'll come back and I'll give you some thoughts on it. Hey, it's The River. And this is a setup for a two-player game. Let's get right into it. I'm going to zoom down to the board here so we can take a look at something real quick here. If we look in the upper corner there, we can see those two dots. Those two dots indicate this is the two-player side. The two-player side is different from the three-player side and three or four-player side in that it has some of the locations have less choice to them. It also has the symbols slightly different on there for like how many play pool can be placed in each spot. Also, they're color coordinated a little differently for 3 and 4 players. Whereas on this side, they're kind of just shaded for dark and light. It all would make sense if you were getting ready to play the game, but you're gonna have to trust me on this one. The 3 and 4 side and the 2-player side are enough different that they make the game a little better at those player counts, but not enough different that they're going to really change the game. Every player starts off with a river, so that's where this game gets its name. We're settling along a river. So here's a player board. This is a river. The river flows from here down, around, and then it ends out at the bottom there. This is showing that we've done our initial setup. The first thing you do is you draft tiles from the tile placement area, which we'll talk about here in a second, and you put a first tile in there. This one's going to pretend like we maybe played a couple rounds. There's an extra tile on there. So you start off with putting a tile in there. You also end up with a boat that has 4 initial pioneers in it. You can see this here. Then there's a 5th pioneer that gets unlocked later in the game once you meet certain criteria. So that's pretty great. Let's go up here and look at the board. The first area we need to look at is the area over here where we have the terrain tiles. The terrain tiles are kind of at the heart of the game here. There are 6 types of terrain tiles. Let's take a look at those real quick here. Focus the camera here to look at those. This is a desert terrain tile. This is a meadow terrain tile. A mountain terrain tile. A forest terrain tile. And a Badlands terrain tile. Then there's also split type tiles. So the type of tiles is going to really matter when we do in-game scoring. So you do want to pay attention to that as you're playing. But basically, this is as simple a worker placement game as you're going to find. And it's a great gateway to worker placement. So the tiles, we shuffled those and we put them on all the spots that indicate here on the board. The initial setup, there we use these spots because we only want to put 3 tiles out. You put the number of players there are plus 1 tiles out for the initial draft. After that, you fill up all the spots. Then we go over here and we look at these bonus tokens and resources. Excellent component quality, what we come to expect from Days of Wonder. But we also are going to shuffle these building tiles over here and place out the appropriate number of building tiles. And we can see these building tiles, they have a basic thing going on with them too. You're going to basically pay the cost associated with those in order to get them. And you can see on this card with this high definition shot that I'm giving you that there is a nice linen finish on there. These cards look really good. Back to the board. We can see all the resources, all the different islands there. There's basically a certain number of resources that go onto each island, depending on player count. So as you can see up here, I've got my extra resources that I won't need in a 2-player game, along with my extra player pioneers and the colors that I'm not using. In this game, I would be using the black and the green pioneers. All right, so that gets us through setup. Basically, we also have, I guess one little thing in setup yet we want to talk about, these bonus markers, these circular bonus markers. There's a stack of these that go from highest to lowest on that side, and then there's a couple zeros on the other. Basically, they're going to be used. The zeros are important still, because there's ways you can still score points with those zeros, But the way how the end game is triggered is in a 2-player game. Once you have 4 of those little bonus tokens on your board, the game is triggered to end, and we will do final scoring. But we will get back to that in a just few seconds here. On a turn, you begin your turn by taking, you can use your resources to trade 3 of any one type of resource to get food. Food is an interesting resource because it's really limited. These resources are always finite. But food here, there's only 4 of them on the board. And they are wilds. You basically can substitute any of the other tokens for a food because it was really important that you're able to eat. So the food is a wild able to be gathered at the beginning by trading 3 resources for 1. The other thing interesting about the food is that it is also, you can place as many workers can go there as you'd like to go. It has the infinite worker symbol on there, which we can kind of see there. This is a worker saying that infinite workers can go there. That means that you can always go there even if there's nothing there and just take one of the other resources. So that's kind of an interesting thing in this game. Let's talk about the other placements though. There's basically 3 types of placements. I talked about the infinite placement one. This one's saying that you can place up to 2 workers for each player. So on the 2-player board, we only have 2 shades basically of these. On the other side, there's every player color has 2 markers there, saying that you can place 2 workers there, and that's what you're going to use to take a terrain tile. Okay, so we can take in this game a 2-player game up to 4 of those terrain tiles can be taken. By going there, you could take one and put it on your river. When you take a terrain tile, you just take it right off the board, and then it goes onto your river. But this is like any other river. You travel down the river, so the next open spot gets that tile. And then so on and so forth. And then this spot here is a rock resource tile that's built onto the board, but I can cover that up, and I will need to cover that up with another tile. That'd be a nice upgrade because it has a rock, a log, and a brick. This is a warehouse. That's where I store things. This might be a nice upgrade for that because now I can store 2 things there. So when I'm adding tiles to the river, I'm doing that by placing workers there. Up here, I may build a building. So that's where I'm going to take the building cards from over here, and I will build them. I pay the resource cost for them, put them under the edge of my board here. So I would take this card, I would pay the 2 stone, the 6 rocks, and then if I built that from face up on the resources there, I could pay, a food and a rock and 6 bricks, or a food and 5 bricks and 2 rocks using that wild mechanism. But once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and pan down here to my board. I'm going to tuck that baby right here under the edge. Hide my points there, because I don't need people remembering how many points I have. Then I'm going to take the topmost of these and go ahead and place it face down as well. So I just got a pile of points there by doing that. The other thing I may do when I build is if I have reserved a card, which is basically something that you're familiar with if you've played Splendor, you take one of these cards and you place it face down in front of you. So in your play area, you would place this card face down in front of you. It's your card that you're just hanging on to right there. And then when you go to build that, you build it, but you have a discount of 1. So this would be really difficult to build from the supply there because it requires 4 food. There's only 4 food in the supply. However, I built this from my reserve where it was face down in front of me because I reserved the card earlier. I only pay 3 food. Makes it much more easier to build. Worth 9 points too, which is a pile of points in this game. So that's reserving a tile. Building a building from the buildings area. That's an infinite placement. As many people can go there as would like. This is a finite placement. Only one person can go here. You go to that space, you become the first player. You take the first player marker, and you are now the first player. This is a similar placement where you place a worker here, and you can swap tiles, terrain tiles on your river. It's magic. You can terraform your river. That's important because later in the game, when we talk about final scoring, you'll see why that matters. Then we have single placements on all these resources with an infinite placement onto the food spot. So when we go there, how do we collect the resources? Well, we count up the resources in our river, in our settlement here. So if I went to the stone, for example, the stone placement, I would collect 1, 2, 3. Or nope, not that. That's an in-game points thing. 1, 2, 3. 3 stone. And then I would store those stone. Take these stone. And I would store them in warehouses. So these warehouses, I need an empty warehouse to store the stone. if later I don't have as many warehouses or I've got a lot of resources, I can always take the resources that I produced and then just toss out some resources I don't want. Either taking only as many resources as I have room in a warehouse or emptying warehouses out to make more room. So that's taking a resource as a possibility. The bonus markers in the cardboard in this game, I will note right now, are really heavy. Really nice component quality on those. You may only have 12 tiles in your river. That's the number of spots you have to hold them. So that's about it. Once we had placed all of our workers, so I had 4 workers in my boat. Once my boat's empty of workers, then I do a cleanup phase. On a cleanup phase, there's something of note here that I would want to mention is that I'm going to take all the terrain tiles left, discard those, and put 5 fresh ones out. Whereas on the buildings tile, I'm just going to put new buildings out. So that lets you do planning from round to round a little better. Kind of nice. We're going to move up. Let's move up one of these player boards here so we can do a final scoring and kind of give you an idea. I'm going to scooch this over, put it right in the center. So over the course of the game, I would have gotten tiles like this, placed them on the board, and I get all these tiles on the board. And over the course of the game, I'm trying to get these columns filled up. They wouldn't fill that way. They would obviously fill this way. So I went down the river and I filled it up, and I filled to this spot right here. So when I'm calculating my in-game scoring, obviously my bonus with that symbol there, those are all going to count for face value. All my buildings I built are going to count for face value. Plus any of these tokens that can get me things as well. This one's saying for, stone, I get a victory point. There's ones that say that no matter what the tile you get, bonus tile you get an additional 1 point. So the zeros could come in handy on that because they do score your points eventually. But this is where a lot of points do come into the game, that you need to worry about your tile placement and why that swap position would really matter. I have 3 unique tile types there in this column. That scores me 6 points because I have 3 unique types. I have 2 unique types there. I believe I would score 4 points for doing that. Maybe it's only 2. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's actually, I think I'm going to say off the top of my head, I think it's 2. Look for a footnote on this. If it's not 2, you'll see a footnote down here in the bottom somewhere that says, hey, it's 4. But I believe it's 2 if you have 2 different types of tiles there. And that's roughly how you calculate your score. One final thing I want to mention that's kind of a clever mechanism. If I did place all the way to this, look at that symbol. That symbol says you lose one of your workers when you place there. So one of my workers is permanently settling in this spot on the board right there. That person's settled there. They are no longer going to be working to try and build our settlement. They're just going to work their own personal settlement. So that's kind of like a catch-up mechanism almost, or it doesn't let you build your river up too fast, which is kind of neat. So I think with this, you get a really good sense of the game and almost probably could play it from here. So let's get back into the studio and let's get my feelings on this game, some final thoughts here. So that's the river. What do I think about the river? Well, I'm going to give you a pros and cons list here, and then I'm going to just kind of break into some discussion here for you based on that pros and cons list, so you'll get a good feel for how I feel about this game after some exposure to it. First off, right off the bat, this game I feel like has staying power. Now, if you look at my list and read ahead, what you're going to do, you're a cheater. I know. I would cheat too and read ahead. It's going to say, is the replay value good? But you have staying power in there. What do you mean by that? I think this game has really awesome staying power, and by that I mean it's going to stay in a lot of collections because it occupies real estate that a lot of other games aren't covering yet. And so that's where I'm getting to my other points here. This game has staying power because it has beautiful production. The components and everything are going to hold up just really, really well. And this is a gateway game, an introductory game that does worker placement, which is awesome. Most introductory games, I'm thinking of games that I've had a lot of success with being gateway games. Ticket to Ride obviously is one that a lot of us came to the hobby through. Catan, obviously a lot of us came to the hobby through that. And even like For Sale and some card games like that, No Thanks. Those are all awesome games that brought a lot of people to the hobby, and we really love those games. They're fun. We play them even as experienced gamers, but they have nothing to do with worker placement. So then we get into this hobby, and then like a lot of what's going on with gaming right now is worker placement. So we don't expose people to worker placement right off the bat. We expose them to these cool games, but not worker placement. Now we can do both. We can say, hey, here's a brand new idea of a game. It's a hobbyist game. It's fun. It has important decisions in it. It's got this awesome production value and art. It's like a like boutique type item, not this like off the shelf, like cheap cardboard kind of stuff that you're used to. This is the awesome world of board gaming. And not only that, I'm going to teach you a new mechanic called worker placement. And we're going to use worker placement in a lot of games that we play in our game group. So this is a good way to bring people into the group, teach them that first mechanic of worker placement. I think that's huge. That can't be understated. That these gateway gamers are going to get to understand worker placement on maybe the first game they play in the hobbyist type of games, which is huge. That's just like you're building, you're scaffolding towards us learning more difficult games. And so I'm excited about this, obviously. I think that the idea that worker placement and a gateway package is just, it's phenomenal. And before this, it's been done to a degree. We've seen games like Lords of Waterdeep that does do worker placement, but that's not the first game you're going to pull off the shelf with someone who's played Monopoly. You know what I mean? Maybe it is, but this one is like 2 steps below that, and it's still fun and it's still cool. So it does have staying power because I think that this is a game that you'd want to keep hanging on to, because you could take it to family Thanksgiving and teach it to the cousins who've not played games, and you can have it sitting around for children to play with you, and have it sitting around to take to like social functions with friends that aren't gamers. I mean, there's just a lot of opportunities to use this as a gateway game, and then it's so quick to play. It's not like this long 90-minute game. You get this thing out and you play it, and it doesn't take long. And it's almost like a filler. So if you're having a full long game day and you want to play something that's a little thinky, but not really giving your brain kind of a break, but still do some worker placement, it's going to fill that real estate too. So it's got a lot of ways that this game could get off the shelf and be used. And because of that, even though this game's not revolutionary in anything it doesn't introduce any brand new, whoa, that does this thing. It does all of this stuff so lightly and so simply and so streamlined that this one's going to stay in my collection for a long time. Has the staying power I'm talking about. Gateway in a new type, and by that I mean it's worker placement in a gateway game. Excellent production value in this game. This is no different than any other Days of Wonder game I've ever played. The only production I've ever said, oh, that's kind of weird, they chose to do that in this game, was Relic Runners with those like half torso things they put in there. But this game has awesome production value in it. It just has really awesome heavy cardboard that's dense, not overly thick, sits on the table well. The stuff's not really warped. That long board, it lays really nice and flat after a couple plays. It's a little stiff when you first get it out, but not bad. Good chunky wooden meeples of a good quality. They could have done tokens. They did wooden meeples. That's what we expect from Days of Wonder. The resources, the shaped resources, not just cubes. That's kind of the stuff we're expecting from Days of Wonder anymore. So really excellent production value, up to par with all the Days of Wonder stuff. I personally was wondering if the production value was going to drop when Asmodee bought Days of Wonder or acquired Days of Wonder. It hasn't. This game is as good a production value as anything I've ever played from Days of Wonder. So excellent job on that. Give you a thumbs up on that for sure. And again, this is a great introduction to worker placement. It's not heavy worker placement. It's not complicated worker placement. It's not the best worker placement at all. But this is the simplest worker placement that I know of. That you just are saying, hey, there's about 6 different places here you can put a guy, and here's how simple it is. You're going to take stuff off the board and put it on your thing here, or you're going to use the stuff you put on your board to build these cards to get points. How simple is that? Just a really quick, simple game. Awesome overall. And this is my new go-to gateway game. Honestly, I think this is going to be the one that comes off the shelf when I'm playing with new gamers. Very first, before Ticket to Ride even. I love Ticket to Ride, and it's a good rummy style, awesome route building game, and we use it a lot for gateway gamers, but this one beats it, I think, for gateway now. My con on this is going to be a game that you're going to play it 2-3 times a year. My guess, in those gateway situations, or like I said, those like slightly padding out your game day. You don't want to play anything too brain burny. Put a little something light in there, still just to continue your game day going on for a little longer. Those are the situations where this game is going to come out and be played. It's not going to be one that you're going to want to play every weekend for 4 months, because there's not a lot to master in this game. This is a game that you can play it well for sure, but it's something that you learn pretty quickly, and then it's kind of like, okay, this is what this game does. And I don't know that it's going to have a lot of replayability. There's a lot of tiles there, so interesting tiles might pop up throughout, but even then there's not a ton of types. So the replay value on this isn't going to be as high as some other games. There's no variable setup kind of thing going on with it to speak of. I mean, they're slightly different on those player boards, different resources. So the replay value on this might suffer a little bit. So that's the only thing I know of, and I haven't played this game enough to wear it out for me yet. If you ask me to play this game right now, there might be other games I'd rather play, but I would be willing to play this one still. And that's after, some decent exposure to this game. So I think the replay value on this might be tough. But that said, still, I'm going to stick with that staying power statement I made. So I know those feel contradictory. I don't think you're going to want to play this game a ton, but there's enough situations to play this game in that it's going to be worth keeping around in your collection. So what do I give this one? Well, we do a wrench rating at the Board Game Mechanics, where a 5 out of 5 wrenches is a game that we think that almost every enthusiastic hobbyist gamer should own. A 4 is we're like hitting that 70%, 3/4. 3, it's for a select group. 2, we can't suggest this for more people than just a select niche of people who want to play that specific game. And then a 1 wrench is I don't think that this is one that we want to recommend to people. We call that a lemon. So is this a lemon? Is this a accepted game? Is it somewhere in the middle? Well, I gave this one 4 out of 5 wrenches. So this is one that I think about 70% of people who are into board gaming should try to find some real estate for, or at least seriously look at this. And again, the reasons why I think that's the case: good family weight game, a lot of good fun in this game. But then again, this one is not going to be so heavy that it's hard to teach or hard to get to the table. There's going to be a lot of groups you can play this with. It's going to be able to be universal in its appeal. I just think there's a lot of just situational things where this would be a good game to have in your collection to complete your collection. And I think it's going to be one that's a good teaching tool, teaching people how to do that worker placement stuff. So I think for those reasons, I give it a 4 out of 5 wrenches. I don't think this one's going to revolutionize the board gaming world. There's nothing revolutionary about it, but it's rock solid, and it's so light, so streamlined, so easy that it's going to help us to be evangelical with our belief that board games are awesome and people should play them. So 4 out of 5 wrenches, leaving it at that. I think it's a good game. All right. So now I'm going to give a plug to ourselves, the Board Game Mechanics. We are primarily a podcast. I'm pretty enthusiastic on here, but on the podcast, I get really silly sometimes, make some wackadoo jokes, do some dumb stuff. And I think that if you are into that, if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, check out our podcast. You can find that wherever you find podcasts. Just look on look at our little seal up here. It says Board Game Mechanics. Type it in just like that. A compound word, Board Game Mechanics. You'll find our podcast. We come out weekly. A good way to fill an hour drive or a part of your workday if you like podcasts. And then beyond that, we do videos here. We have a website, bgmechanics.com. Go there, check out everything, connect with us there, leave us a note, find us on Facebook. You can do that through the website. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching so much. This thing is blowing up. So my partner and I, Jason, my partner in this business, he and I started this thing a year ago. We thought, man, this is just going to be for our fun. Well, now we're getting thousands of listens a month and a bunch of views, and a bunch of you guys are subscribing. If you enjoyed this, subscribe. We love to connect with you guys. We love that you're watching these videos. We love that the board game industry is starting to notice us and say, hey, we want people to see your content with our games being there. So your support's making all that possible. Thank you for that, and continue it. Tell a friend maybe. So anyway, I've rambled enough about, or maybe begged is a better word, begged you long enough for you to be a part of the Riveted, is what we call our fans. But man, seriously, thank you so much for watching, and keep gaming.